Okay, it's going to work like that.
Okay.
Thanks. Anyway, the first thing I want to say is thank you very, very much to the students and faculty who've been showing me so much kindness in the last few days to me and my family. And I'm very, very happy to be back here again after 3 years, which was much too long to be away. Thank you very much for all the kindness you've shown me. So, when Mr. Hosoi invited me to come and speak, he asked me to speak on the subject of what is the real meaning of this school and its buildings. Well, in one sentence, I mean, what can be described as what is the process that has occurred here is quite simple, can be summarized as creation of life. So, in order to explain what I mean by that, how the building is reflected and so forth, I want to start by talking a little bit about my understanding of Japan. I feel, as a foreigner, that the single most important thing about Japan is the respect for each person's feeling, which is carried out in every action by every person all the time, as far as they are able to do it. For a foreigner, this is the most amazing thing about Japan, and always moves me very much every time I come here. Now, actually, my feeling about this matter is that it is by far the most important thing about Japan. If we view Japan in a historical context and in the context of a worldwide situation, this deep respect for the feeling of the individual and feeling of the group, I believe, is the most profound contribution that Japan has to make to the world civilization. Unfortunately, I believe this fact, which all Japanese people know, is not so well known in the world. So when people from the world outside are looking at Japan today, the main export they see from Japan is Sony, Hitachi, things like that. And of course, those things are quite important. But compared with the absolute respect for deep feeling, I think those technological things are very trivial. Unfortunately, I believe Japan has not yet made its great contribution to human experience in this realm well known in the world. Actually, if anything, the opposite is happening here. That is, that great respect for feeling, which existed in traditional Japan, might very, very slowly be disappearing. So I realize it's very impertinent for a stranger to come and talk about these matters. But anyway, please forgive me, because I think it is the most important thing about Japan. Let me just talk about, when I say, well, this attitude to human feeling might be disappearing, and then I said to him, but actually, it's already disappearing very tragically, because all the buildings that have been built in the post-war era are totally damaging to people's deep feeling. So if in a period of 30 or 40 years, the whole culture of Japan is invaded by these kind of buildings which damage people's feeling, how much longer will the people of Japan actually hold on to their understanding about feeling? The reason the title of my lecture is the one that was read out before, about future cultural change in modern Japan, is that it is my hope that a new understanding of buildings and a new movement about the making of buildings can re-establish the deep feeling that all Japanese people have in their hearts, but which is being invaded and destroyed every day by the outside world today. When I say the creation of a life, of an ordinary life, what I mean is creation of a life in which the deep feeling of every person and every group is being helped and sustained at every moment in every place. Now, from a sensible point of view, one would say, well, of course, any functional architecture, any architecture which has a functionalism must have that purpose to sustain human life. But actually, the functionalism which we have been familiar with in the world of architecture for the last 50 or 60 years is not like that at all. Even though architects talk about functionalism, the real thing they are doing is only some kind of image or fictional functionalism. It's something you have, let's say, sharp buildings which hit the sky and it looks like an express train, or some things are very, very shiny and it has a functional image, but not an actual deep functional relationship to the feeling of an ordinary person. And just to complete the thought of this first part of what I have been speaking, I suppose many of you realize that traditional Japanese architecture, that means the architecture which existed in past centuries and which was really common up until maybe 1920, was fundamentally connected only to people's feelings. Even though we might think it very quaint now or very touristic, very charming, but something from the past, at least for people from Tokyo, the actual meaning of traditional Japanese architecture was that every tatami, every tokonoma, every rock in the garden, every gate, every shoji, the main meaning of it was to protect the feeling of the individual and of the group. That means to protect the wa. Now, in building this school, we used some methods to try and reach as closely as possible the real feeling of people. That means of the students and of the teachers and of other people using this place. But before describing in any detail what methods we used, I want to start by mentioning something just about my experience in the last few days. 6 years ago, I was at that time the guest of Eishin Gakuen in Musashinoshi, and created by the same group of teachers and directors, which was the school with the same philosophy as this one. So there was some feeling of special liberty and special intellectual freedom in the students of that place. But still, and I apologize for saying this, actually, the school in Musashinoshi was rather similar to a normal Japanese high school. The teaching was different and the curriculum was different, but the atmosphere of the students was a little bit more like a typical one. So somehow the deep desire of the teachers to liberate the students was having some trouble in that place. When I came here a few days ago, now this school is 3 years old, I experienced a very, very strong feeling of the spirit of the students. I was really very deeply moved by that spirit. And up until I felt that spirit, I couldn't say positively, we've succeeded or we've failed. But in meeting that spirit here, I know that partially we have succeeded. It's a little difficult to express in words what I mean by that spirit, but somehow I could feel each person as a unique spirit moving around with the other ones. And again now, if I may, perhaps it's impertinent, but I want to make some comment about modern Japan. See, my feeling is that modern Japan is very much dominated by the company policy. And of course, in some degree, that's caused by the Japanese desire to be in harmony with the group. That is, it's always very, very important for each person to feel comfortable in his family, of his group around him. But again, the atmosphere of traditional Japanese people 200, 300, 500 years ago was quite different. Of course, even in history, there was always a tremendous respect for authority. But in the Middle Ages and later periods, there was an actual individuality of each person that was much more mischievous and much more alive at the same time that authority existed externally. So my understanding of the cultural direction of this school is something like that. That is, teaching people how their own individual spirit can exist in harmony with authority without being damaged by that authority. Now you may be wondering, well, this is all very well. What does this have to do with buildings, and what does it have to do with the environment? But the essence of the matter is that a person can only reach his own inner feeling of calm if all the small details of the world he is in are helping to support his own calm and his own liberation. So, for example, let me just jump quickly to some practical examples, very small ones. The fact that all the homerooms in this homeroom street are making a street together already in itself is a kind of respect for actual feelings of a person 16 or 17 years old who likes to feel that atmosphere with other students. Or the way each homeroom, each classroom has its balcony area with the sliding windows allows the students to be in a place connected to their classroom, but connected out to the street where fellow students are. So that place helps to heal the feeling of a person experiencing that part of life. I remember when I was interviewing teachers at the beginning of our work, I used to ask people, tell me something about the atmosphere of an ideal school where you feel really happy. Well, sometimes it was a little difficult at first for people to answer, because after living in a concrete box for many years, they didn't feel able to give a truthful answer to such a question. But the thing that I want to impress most strongly is that any architecture which starts with the detailed reality of everyday life will get buildings that look something like these. But then I used to say, no, please, just dream. Just even if it sounds stupid to you or you think it's impossible, anyway, tell me. And I remember at that time, one of the things that used to come from many different people in answer to that question was something like, I would like to be walking by some water, maybe some small streams, maybe some bridge or some island, or something peaceful where I can go in between my classes. Of course, at that time, thinking about a typical asphalt playground and one big concrete building, such a request seemed impossible. But gradually, as we took more and more information like that, deep from the heart of the different people we spoke to, a consistent picture was built up about the nature of the actual environment which will support people's feelings in a high school. Of course, in relationship to that matter about the water, as you know, we built the lake here. Now, well, it might seem like something that's a little bit romantic or just a nice thing. But the actual meaning is very much deeper than that. For example, the other day I heard a survey by some students what places on the campus are most significant to them. And number one, lake. Number two, bridge. Then, did you mention Bashi?
Pardon?
Did you mention bridge?
Yes.
Yes. Then, some other students showed me a film, kind of a film, very short film, 8-minute film they made, which was, well, I interpreted it as a kind of story of their liberation. Very, almost surrealist kind of film, but deeply a very truthful one about their feelings. And in that film, first they are running along typical Tokyo landscape road, a very kind of uncomfortable feeling. And then when they come to the part having to do with the school, suddenly all the students in that film are jumping in and out of the lake. I think it's important to realize that I am not referring to that matter about the water as some kind of joke or some kind of romantic feeling. The existence of water and our relationship to it is part of the process which liberates our deepest feeling and allows us to be alive more truly. It's no accident that the temple of Ryoanji has a large lake before reaching the stone garden. And it's no accident that a typical traditional Japanese garden might have small drops of water falling from some bamboo onto some stone. These matters are not just pleasant, but absolutely necessary to our well-being as human individuals. Well, I can't go on and on with examples of that kind of thing, but I want you to realize that in the process of making this place, every stone was thought about like that. Of course, we failed many, many times. Well, even though we tried to put such a feeling in every single detail, maybe we only succeeded in 20% of the cases. But every small bit of shkui, or even the ornaments on the home-based buildings, just kind of small concrete block casting, has the intention in it to allow the human spirit to become more calm and more concentrated being in front of that thing. And I believe there is a direct relationship between all those small things and the way the spaces of this place work, and that spirit which is beginning to emerge in the students of this place. Because, well, to put it very, very simply, in order to become alive in yourself, you need a world of things and events which leave you in peace so that your own inner self can develop freely. So what I mean by creation of life is creation of a series of places and things and events which permit that freedom of the inside person to live and breathe. Now, let me come to a third point. Many people I've spoken to have commented on some kind of historical atmosphere about this place. And what I want to say now, the main purpose is to reject totally any idea that this place and its essence is connected in some way with history. The other day, I heard a very funny comment about the vending machines. Apparently, there has been some discussion about vending machines. Some people feel they are damaging to the campus and they should be removed or hidden. One student, I think maybe the president of the press club, even told me, "Isn't it true the campus is meant to be historical, so therefore we have to keep the vending machines away?" And I told him, absolutely not. The vending machines are a very practical and simple, ordinary part of Japanese life. It means anybody can get a drink of some kind whenever they want. And I think it would be quite ridiculous to put this school like some kind of museum, too precious to allow ordinary things from everyday life to enter into it. See, the actual reality is that the buildings that you see here, all and their shapes and their character, have not come from any attempt to be similar to historical buildings. As I mentioned to you, the origin of the shape and character of these buildings is only the detailed reality of everyday life. Of course, since a vending machine, of course, when people look at these buildings, they say, "Oh, it reminds me somehow of something I've seen before, something old." And that's quite understandable, because the historical buildings always were made out of respect for human feeling, so therefore they also had these same kinds of shape and character. So, if I want to put this more strongly, I would say that the character of buildings of the 21st century is more, if human society succeeds in rearranging its priorities so that actual human feeling is the main desire all the time, then buildings of the 21st century will look more like these than like Shinjuku. Let me come back to the topic about Japanese culture and its transformation. It's my hope that Japan will, in the next few decades, learn to reestablish its own greatest strength. That means absolute concern and respect for human feeling. The gradual establishment of that transformation will not be easy. For example, right now, Saitama Prefecture and Chiba Prefecture have a reputation for quite a strong authoritarian and military attitude to high schools, to persuade even those kind of officials who are moving schools towards that kind of administrative atmosphere to change their mind will be a very difficult job. But actually, that respect for feeling is the greatest buried treasure that Japan has in its hands. So, facing us right now is a very, very big fork in the road, going more and more towards technology and robots and calculators and VCRs and so forth, and abandoning the respect for feeling, or taking the respect for feeling as the main thing and allowing technology to play in the second place. I believe the directors and teachers of this school have begun a very heroic stand for modern Japan in this direction. Of course, the buildings here are only minor. The buildings are only helping the fundamental attitude which the teachers and directors are carrying forward. Maybe I just want to give one small detail to give an example of the attitude of teachers in this software which they have been creating. Some time ago, the teachers took the decision to abandon any school uniform in this school. In the old school at Musashi no Shi, of course, students were wearing a normal kind of uniform. So all the time, the teachers and directors are taking steps like that, trying to help in the liberation of the feeling of the students so that the learning process can be more profound. But I want to give a small example to show the subtle interaction between that software and the hardware of the buildings. Why did the teachers had been thinking about abandoning uniform for many years, but they actually took the definite decision shortly after arriving at this place. And several people have commented to me on the kind of reason for that coincidence. On a subtle level, it is very, very difficult to imagine students in uniforms marching around this campus. Of course, in theory, it's possible, but everybody can feel it's very difficult to imagine it. So the much more modern and liberated feeling of students in this place is directly interacting with the harmony of the buildings that is supporting the efforts of the software from the teachers. I think that kind of subtle interaction is the main meaning of this school. Thank you. Thank you very much.
どうもありがとうございます。
Thank you very much.